While your intake process is quietly killing your bankruptcy practice. My name is Philip Tirone with 720 System Strategies. I'm here with Josh Green from Salt Lake City, Utah. Josh, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Good
Appreciate
to
it.
have you.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
invite.
Thank you for sharing your story. And Rich Mack with 3 Pillars BK Consulting, as many of you know from past calls. The purpose of this call is to talk about what's possible with the right people in the right seats. It goes back to Good to Great, one of the greatest business books ever written. Jim Collins talked about having the right people in the right seats in the bus. The bankruptcy process and this intake is so critical. It's absolutely critical to the growth of any bankruptcy practice. And the reason why a lot of us love our bankruptcy practice and the bankruptcy industry is specifically because it's transactional. I mean, Josh, you run a family law practice, right?
Yeah.
You can't quite bring in cases in family law the same way you can with bankruptcy, right? I mean,
No,
it's
definitely not.
it's emotional, everything changes. And the reason why we love our bankruptcy practice, it is very, very transactional. That's the beauty. The problem, on the other hand, if you're with the wrong process, it seizes up and it becomes overwhelming, and it's easy for people to bring in leads and not convert. And Josh, you're gracious enough to share your story. And a lot of people wouldn't talk about their story because, I made some mistakes, but thank you for being here and just talking about your past. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, the thing about Josh is Josh, you are one of the business-minded attorneys that we have, right? Where you're actually thinking proactively, hey, how can I scale? How can I build this where it's not all relying on me, right? Because in the bankruptcy practice, it's easy to have it all rely on you, right? And then you go on vacation and you're not bringing any leads, you're not filing any cases. You don't think like that. And so let's talk a little bit about your practice. You did 120 filings last year.
We did about 10 a month.
10 a month. And you have one full-time paralegal. You have a paralegal that comes in after hours, after her job, to do complex cases, right?
That's correct.
And then you have you as the attorney, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a whole nother law group for family law and business transactions, right?
Yeah, I keep them pretty separate. Yep.
Right. And you keep them separate. And you started the bankruptcy practice as like, hey, I just want to build this so it's something you can scale. But you've been, the one law group's been paying for the other law group, sort of expenses, as we all do when we start a business, right?
For sure.
Okay. For those that are familiar with the LOI process, as we talk about the non-attorney paralegal talking to the client in advance. We've talked about 3 Pillars Bankruptcy Consulting with Rich Mack. He's been on many calls. When we're at NACPA, we're actually together in the booth together. And Rich has a team of non-attorney paralegals that actually talk to the lead in advance, take them through a 30-minute intake, quote the fees of the attorney, and then have them sign a letter of intent. And then the handoff goes to the attorney, right? And that's something you've been part with Rich for many, many years, probably. I don't know how
A couple years now. Yeah. At least 2, right?
I think it's been closer to 3.
3. Yeah. I think we're approaching 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was always the system was always seized, right? And just as they always say, there's a saying, it's darkest before the light. It becomes the darkest before the light. And in March of this year, you had 22 of these retains that Rich has his team put together and handed it over to you, and only 2 of them retained. So a 9% retain rate, right? And you were like, I'm out of it. You were like, I'm done with bankruptcy, right?
Yeah.
And
I was definitely at the end of my rope because, like you were saying, I was not being profitable. I was taking money from my other law firm to fund the bankruptcy. And, I've always had bankruptcy as part of my practice because I did a lot of it at the early stages of my practice, in law, and I studied a lot of it in law school. So it was always a big part of what I wanted to do. But, outside of one brief moment in 2017, I just really never saw much, huge success. 10, maybe 15 cases a month, which is great when you're doing everything, and you can be profitable that way. But if you don't want to have everything tied to you, it's almost, I mean, that's not workable. You need bigger volume for that.
When you said earlier on a different call we were on, you're at the point in life where you don't want to be calling people and asking them for the paycheck stuff. Like, you're just sort of like over that. And we've all
That's
reached
true.
that. There's a perspective, we all get there. And that's sort of like where you're at with your family and all that, right?
For sure.
Okay. So you reached out and you're like, I'm out. I can't handle the bankruptcy business anymore. And Rich and I were talking, and I specifically thought to myself, I said, Josh is someone who gets it. Like, he's a businessman. We need to figure out a way to solve this problem for him, right? And Rich, how many intakes have you done in your career? I mean, like,
We're approaching tens of thousands at this point. So
yeah, so you've been doing this nonstop, and I said, what if we didn't have to worry about Josh retaining? What if we could figure out a way for you to retain? So immediately I
Yeah.
called John Orcutt. As you know, John Orcutt, dear friend of mine, mentor of mine. He's a great resource for me when I have ideas. I want to run something by. And I said, John, tell me about your non-attorney salespeople, because I know they have it, right? He has them all the time. And he sent me these forms, and I want to show you this, because immediately he's like, oh no, this is how we do it. I took this, I sent it to Rich, and I don't know how you guys integrated it, but John Orca, one of the largest, most successful bankruptcy attorneys in the country, who's filed over 75,000 bankruptcies, has his non-attorney paralegals say this. It's like at the beginning of every meeting, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a trained paralegal non-attorney. I'm not here to give you legal advice. That's the attorney's job. I'm here to gather your information and find out what's going on. And subject to attorney review, I'll try to answer your questions and show you your options. During this meeting, if we need to pull in an attorney to talk to him, we'll do so. Do you understand? Okay, let's get started. And it's a key component to what we're doing here, because what we're trying to take away is not just the intake, but the actual retain, right? Where we can retain and not have the attorney do the retain. Then one step farther is a disclaimer that the attorney signed with the retainer agreement. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but as you can see, this is John's thing, John's copy. But it's a whole disclaimer about non-attorneys paralegals, because we want to be completely compliant. As you know, I'm fanatical about no gray area. Like, I don't want any gray area. We want to lock down what's legal. We want to allow what's right in the law and not do anything else, right? So, that's the whole thing of this concept, is we're disclosing upfront, non-attorney paralegal, non-attorney paralegal. Rich and his team is not changing prices because we can't, because that would be illegal. And we are following the letter of the law. And then in the retainer agreement, we add that this is subject to the attorney's approval, because the non-attorney paralegals may get it wrong, right? So the concept was, Josh was saying, I'm out. I don't want the bankruptcy business, because he retained 9% of the 22 intakes that we did. And the very next month of the 20 intakes that were done, Rich, specifically Rich, retained 85% or 17.
Right.
Okay. So it's same exact lead flow. We're talking 30 days different. So let me just start with you, Josh. When that happened in 1 month, like, what was your, like,
I mean,
what did you think?
obviously it's transformational, right? It changes your excitement about what you're doing. When you start seeing those things come in, it's very energizing to not just me, I mean, but to the whole team. The whole team is excited about that. I think also it's nice because Rich and I have worked together for a long time, so there's a level of trust we already had going into, okay, man, you take this over. Like, you do this. I think I was willing to do that because of the trust that we had built over the years prior. And I'd worked with a lot of the people on his team, the intake people that he has. He's got a stellar group of people. And so, for me, the trust was already there, but then to see the results happen almost overnight, was pretty phenomenal. It was very energizing.
Was there a part of you like, what the heck? How could it be so different? Like almost disbelief, like, well, it's something
A
else.
little bit, yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I think another part of it was when I was doing all of the intakes, I had similar results, and so it was almost confirming, like, okay, if we get the right person in place, these are really pretty easy to close. They shouldn't be that hard to close. People who are struggling, right? They need help. They're gonna go to somewhere. They just need a couple of answers and know that you can solve a problem for them. That's really
Yeah.
all that needs to happen. And so for me, it was almost like, okay, I'm not crazy, right? It wasn't just like some fluke that happened before when this is
Sure.
you just got to get the right people, got to get the right people in place. Yeah.
No doubt. Rich, what went through your mind with that?
I've known Josh for long. I've been doing his intake for almost 3 years. It's actually October 22 is when I started to do his intake, but I knew Josh long before that for my previous job. But when he's like, have that frustrating month and he's about to call it quits, I'm like, no, knowing your practice and knowing you, I feel like there's a lot of potential here. So I had full confidence and I'm not going to charge you anything up front. I'm just going to take this over and do it.
Try it out.
And
Like
you pay me,
proof of
you can pay
concept.
me after I make some money, then you can pay me after the fact. And so I was very confident with the lead flow, and I know Annette. I work with Annette closely with another firm, and so I just kind of saw this vision. And like, I feel like I can do this and turn it around quickly. And
So what's interesting is, Josh, you talked about the right seat in the right bus and the right people in the right bus, right? And it's easy for all of us on the call. Like every single one of us we're business owners. We keep people in a seat because we're encouraging and we want it to work, right? I mean, you had someone, you know, calling out and retaining these people or whatever they were, but there was a disconnect, but you just believed it was going to get better. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, and I think like when you have people, my first inclination is, okay, we can train this. Like this is something that you can learn, right? Like you can train. And what I realized after going through that process and spending months, I mean, Rich and I spent months trying to get Annette there, and this is not to say that Annette's not capable. It's just I didn't realize the level in which she hated it. Like she just hated it. Like, and when you've got somebody there that doesn't want to do that and just wants to be in her lane. She's really good paralegal. She's really good at drafting cases. Adding that to her, I just thought this was like, me personally, I love talking to people. That's like the part that I actually do like. Talking to them and then, you know, getting to know them and knowing their problems and then saying, yeah, we got a solution. The part I hate is the stuff that Annette's doing, right? Like to take that over, and I don't want to do the drafting. I don't want to do all that stuff. Finding out that she hated it, like I think that I mean, it spoke volumes, right? And I realized really quickly that she's never going to give her all into something she hates doing.
Yeah.
And I had the wrong person in the wrong place, and so seeing that juxtaposition of like 1 month, it was Net, the next month it was all Rich, and how much I mean, obviously the results speak for themselves. It was almost instantaneous. And it just got better. I mean, I think now we're even higher close ratio than even that first.
So that's been stabilizing. 85%
for sure.
in May and June.
Definitely.
Okay.
yeah,
I think even a little bit higher.
that's it. Also just a mention, I've been transacting on these calls too, on these intakes. I'm taking initial payments, and so I'm
Okay, that's a
feeding
good
his
point.
operating account.
I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about, so when you're retaining, you're obviously getting the retainer agreement signed. You're also going into the case management, right? And putting 3 in. So what does that look like, putting in the case management? Like you use Clio, right, Josh?
No, we use MyCase. We
Oh,
use
MyCase,
MyCase for management. But so he'll go in, he'll take the payment. One of the things that we just implemented this month is it also will kick off a workflow, right? So it automatically gets kicked over to the next team, right? Which is just something that we just recently put in place where they'll go in and they start chasing the documents and working with the client to get everything they need so that Annette can then go and draft the case. And so it's not just take the payment, get them to sign the retainer. It's also kicking off that workflow, which is a critical piece.
So Josh, you called the 2-week mindset, right?
Yeah.
It is like, okay, retainer agreement signed. I got 2 weeks before we lose the client. Can you speak into that? Because I've never heard talk about it like that
Yeah.
clearly. So can you speak into that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, obviously there are cases where, 2 weeks is not realistic just because of circumstance, but most clients that we work with, they're being garnished. They have unsustainable situations with their finances that they need help and they need it really quickly. And you're never going to get them more excited about what you have to offer than in that first couple weeks, right? I mean, they're motivated. They finally did pick up the phone. They did call you. Uh, Now they're excited. They're motivated to get this done. This is when we need to strike when the iron's hot, so to speak, right? We got to get them, build on that enthusiasm, get them some tangible results, which is a quick filing. If we can get them filed, that's the sooner we can start collecting payments. That's the sooner we can get revenue in. And so really it's triggered by the filing though. We could do a lot of work and we've done this before, right? Where we've done a ton of work, but we didn't really get a lot done. And then the client goes, you know what, I've changed my mind or whatever, or whatever, there's all sorts of reasons why they leave. And then we just, we kind of, Rich and I have been left kind of scratching our heads saying like, man, we just lost out on this client that was ready to go. There was nothing in their way. Just our process was getting in the way. And that's when we started optimizing the process.
So with regard to the 2-week mindset, that's done by Rich's team as well, right? You called the
Definitely, yeah.
Rich team,
Yeah,
you manage that. And Rich, you bonus the team if they hit it within the 2 weeks. Is that right?
Just like Josh is saying, he has this mindset like, what can we do better? What can we do to continue to improve? And one thing, John Orcutt took some time with me at NAC a couple of years ago, never forget. He's like, always find something you can do a little bit better, and it's going to have a huge impact on your results. And I've always had that mindset, and so I was finding what was missing. So first of all, we were very successful with the LOIs, but then something was missing. So I stepped in, I filled that gap, and then as I'm filling that gap, there's another gap that I needed to fill, and that was getting the docs in. Like, what are the obstacles in getting these people from retaining to filed? And so we identified some of those obstacles. And so I created a new position within my company, the bankruptcy concierge, and their job is essentially just hold that person's hand until they get filed. And to Josh's point is that 2-week time period seems to be golden. So,
Got it.
but also transacting, there's a few things that need to be done. Sometimes people just don't have to pay. They're getting garnished. They need 2 to 4 weeks to come up with the upfront fees. So instead of passing that back on to Josh and his firm and creating extra work and somebody to chase down, me and my team are doing the chasing now. And we're holding the person's hand. So by the time that client gets to Annette has everything she has in addition to the upfront costs, however they're paying for their bankruptcy. She has everything she needs. So all she has to do is just write the case. So she doesn't have to talk to clients anymore, chase down documents or anything.
These are two of the biggest problems in the debtor attorney world. I mean,
Oh,
like everyone on the call feels this pain. Like everyone on this
Oh,
on the
100%.
Zoom session feels this pain, and it's so key. And the real question I ask for everyone on the call is, look, first of all, who do you have in place that you've been telling yourself, I'm going to train them. I'm going to train them. They're going to get there. They're going to get there. Speaking of the same Jim Collins, right? Getting the right people in the right bus, which is a fantastic, iconic business book. Another thing you said in the book is fire fast and hire slow. Like that's another thing. I'm not saying anyone should be fired. You found a different seat for you, Josh, in the bus, and
Definitely.
and she's probably happier, right?
Oh, she's so much happier. And I think to speak to that point too is, when you have the right person, they're motivated to learn. They want to learn, even if they don't know everything to do right. Like they'll get the feedback. Like Rich will give the feedback, and that was resistant, right? I mean, there's times where she was pushing back, like because she just didn't want to do it, and I finally had to sit down there, and I think after having a couple of really candid conversations, realized, okay, you're not the right person for this.
Yeah.
Because when you have the right person there, they're motivated, right? And they'll hear things like what Rich taught us, like, hey, don't just call once, call twice back to back at least, maybe even 3 times, because by the time you get to that third call, usually they're picking up because they want to figure out, well, who is this person that keeps calling, correct? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't just a normal, like, sales call or someone trying to sell me something. This is someone that needs something important. Just simple tips like that have been transformational. But like I said, if you don't have the right person, they're not going to hear that. They don't hear it and they don't care. They don't want to do it anyway. And so I think that was pretty big difference.
You know, Kathy Colby created this Colby index where it's like a test, like a Meigs Briar Meigs or a Briar Meigs. No,
Briggs-Meyer.
Briggs Meyer. Thank you. It's sort of like a test that you take, but it's about instinct, right? It's like when you have when you're ready to act, what's your first instinct? So like when you open an IKEA box, do you get the instructions? Do you try to figure it out on your own, right? And he talks about instincts, and it aligns perfectly with what you're talking about. Like she just wasn't somebody who her instinct was not to pick up the phone. Her instinct was to do paperwork, which stopped her from calling.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Or send an email, right? Which these people don't read their
exactly.
emails. You know, it's
feel
like, oh, I
better.
sent them an email. You know, well, if they don't read them, then who cares? You know, like.
So anyways, I invite all of you to reflect on the call. Like, where is that person that can multiply your business in a very meaningful way? Where is that person in the wrong seat? And address it fast, not slow. Now I want to get to the best part of the call. Obviously, all this costs money. Oh my gosh, Rich, what do you charge? Oh my God, we got all this stuff. Like, where's the profit in this? And you've heard me say on these strategy calls, and if you watch the YouTube videos, you're going to hear it over and over. I talk profit, 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 profit. So what you did, Josh, for this to work, right? Like a year ago, you were charging something different than you're charging now, right? Like you were charging $200, whatever the monthly was, it was $2,000 for a 7. And now Rich is quoting at $2,500 for a 7. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
$2,750 in Utah, Nevada.
Okay, $2,750. So you've increased your fee somewhere between 25 and whatever 40%, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So it
Hey, we got some lucky
painful.
things too. So hey, we did get some lucky things, right? I think that the trustees in Utah came out and adjusted, right, the the no look fees, which typically is an indicator we can increase our fees. But absolutely, I mean, increasing our fees made a dramatic difference.
But on the chapter 7, has nothing to do with the no look fee, right? Am I right on that?
No, it's true.
Okay.
But it usually is a good indicator of where a reasonable chapter 7 would be. So we felt really comfortable at raising those fees. Yeah.
Okay. So where you were charging $2,000 a month for 120, now you're charging 25 or 2750, which in essence pays for Rich's fees, right? Rich,
100%. Yeah.
how do you charge for this in terms of like the retains and all that stuff? Like, how does this work out practically so everyone's on the call can understand it?
When somebody does the retainers with me, there's a lot of value with it, and I'll be able to monetize that. So that includes the LOI, the intake process, and the retainer. And so for chapter 7s, we're doing $400. And then for the concierge service, I add $25 with the concierge involved, just so I can bonus them and compensate them properly. And this is just kind of new, so it might be subject to change because we just literally started this. And it's ironic that you keep quoting the book Good to Great, because I literally just read that right before I had this, took over this with Josh. And so yeah, and then we're doing the 450 for chapter 13s. But yeah, as far as the pricing, just to comment on that real quickly, 2 weeks ago, I had a client, one of his clients, we signed the retainer. This is a young man in his mid-20s living with his parents. He's like, oh, my parents are going to pay for this in full. I'm like, okay, great. And then called his parents to take payment. They're like, oh, my wife has their credit cards. Can you call me Monday? I'm like, okay, great. And this is like on a Thursday. So I'll call you on Monday to get payment. Call them, said, hey, over the weekend, we went to church. We found, and somebody at church told us there's a bankruptcy attorney that's charging $1,800. And we're charging $2,750 plus filing fee, so we're at $3,100. So using the 720 strategies, I'm like, okay, let me just ask you a few questions. I want to make sure you're getting taken care of. Did they talk to you about building credit after bankruptcy? No, they didn't. They talked to you about watching out for your creditors, making sure your creditors are compliant with the laws and looking out for you post bankruptcy. No, is like your son that you're paying for bankruptcy, he has a car situation. Did this guy talk to him about his car situation? Because he's negative equity his car. I actually did an assessment and looked it up. No, he didn't. Say, okay, now we need to use Ash Auto. So if this guy's not talking about anything, I don't think he has the time to do a proper, those fees are not the proper fees to allow him to do the bankruptcy properly and effectively. So I was like, I can give you a little bit of a discount, but not much. So I gave him a $400 discount. We did $2,750. We just cut out the filing fee, and we still were able to convert that lead, and he ended up paying it in full. So almost $1,000 more to the competition just by adding these services, and with Josh's background and reputation in the area. So
I mean, and the debtor is better served. They're going to rebuild their credit. They're going to get their
yes,
credit report cleaned. The client served. And
yes,
that's the thing. I mean, if you hear anything on our strategy calls on these YouTube channel, you're going to hear it across the board. The cheapest debtor attorney is not the winner. I mean, and it's throughout the calls over and over and over. Our attorneys are saying, I raised my fees and I made more money and I could serve the client better. And another thing this points to is, for the most part, attorneys, debtor attorneys, they're instinctually not the salesperson, right? For the most part. I think that's a fair conversation. I mean, I talk to a lot of debtor attorneys. They're not the person that can pivot like Rich just did. Like Rich, hey, bring me anyone and I'm going to tell you why the value is, where other attorneys would be like, okay, I'll do it for $1,800.
and it's very low pressure. But then going back to your original question, is how I structured the fees is I didn't want to, I know that he was, Josh mentioned that he was losing money with the marketing and just not filing enough cases to keep things going. And so I didn't want to gouge him prices. And so I always paid after the fact. So once you start making money, then we get paid. And so we all win together. That's kind of the beautiful thing about it. It's like I wasn't getting paid up front. I was putting my own sweat and tears into the situation. And then as I developed that and helped his firm become profitable, then he had some money in his operating account to actually pay me. So it wasn't financially devastating at all or stressful.
Which I'll be honest, when we went into that initial meeting, and this is just me being very candid, I was ready to just, it wasn't gonna matter what you said, Rich. I was gonna say, "Listen, I'm sorry, man. I gotta, I'm just taking money. I'm basically just taking money out of my own pocket and I'm losing money. I'm not doing this anymore." And then you came up with that and you're like, well, look, let me prove it to you. And then, once you get the actual close and the money starts coming in, then we'll work out and I was not expecting that, and all of a sudden it changed my perspective, and the proof has been in the pudding, right? Like it's like we're starting to see the results. Everybody's happy, everybody's making money, and it was a breath of fresh air for us because it allowed me the ability to do that.
This is absolutely awesome. So let's open up the questions. Any questions? Raise your hand, show your video. You got Josh Green, Rich Mack. You went from retaining 9% of the signed LOIs to 85 to 90% and increasing the fees 25 to 40%. Any questions?
Yeah, so I have been on the fence probably the last couple of years about thinking about bringing somebody on, such as Rich. I know, Josh, you were talking about earlier how you thought you could train somebody. Any advice on where I should go? Because I do think it's kind of a combination of a sales and marketing position,
Definitely.
but also has bankruptcy background. And that's I think that's my key missing component as well, because we're getting a lot of leads, but we're only converting, you know, 10-15%. And I want those numbers
Yeah.
to go up.
So for me, like when I was doing it myself, I had similar results. But the word where Rich would talk, like where he just mentioned that example where um they were getting somebody who was 18, I probably would have in that moment would have said, fine, yeah, I'll match that price. Like whereas Rich was able to get me a lot more than what I would have never done that. That's just not my sales instinct. So finding someone who has a sales background, I think is going to be critical. Um, and I think as far as where I've been really fortunate is I mean, I think Rich is still cheaper than because I interviewed people because I was like, that's what I need. I need a salesperson. And all of those salespeople were going to be dramatically more expensive than what I'm paying Rich and his team because I'm getting a team. I'm not just getting
Yeah.
Rich. I mean, I'm getting Rich, but I'm getting a whole team trained by Rich. And so it allows me to scale and it's still going to be less because most of those salespeople, they want, 40, maybe 50,000 base, and then they want commissions or whatever on top of that, which is kind of tricky in our line of work, right? Like it's sometimes hard to do that. So, um, so for me, having somebody like Rich in place has been transformational. But I would definitely look for someone who has a sales background, someone who's maybe not necessarily bankruptcy, but has a background in legal sales. Like I talked to a couple of people where they had family law, right? They were non-attorney salespeople for a family law firm. Well, there's some translatable skills there. But that's tricky. But for me, I did have a script that I worked off of. I finally went down and recorded my own script when I talked with clients. I think that's a good starting point. Documenting as much as you can, I think, is going to be really, really critical for optimizing those processes, sales processes, because there's going to be some churn there, and you want to make sure that you get the next person up and running as quickly as possible. But Rich probably has more to say because he has a whole team of salespeople that he works with. So I would imagine he has some feedback too.
Yeah, I have a professional trainer involved with my team. Our training is awesome. I actually just had a law firm out of Florida pay me to retrain his whole intake team. So we got involved and we helped them out, and they had an immediate increase in their conversions. Training is paramount. Going back to the right person on the bus. I have 13 people that work for me, and every single one of them, they're all tight knit. Like they're all friends of friends. So they're all like friends or relatives, and so like they're so tight knit. It's like the best well-oiled machine I ever see. Every time I go to verify, make sure that something's gotten done, it's already gotten done before I even like had to look at it. And then the training model that we implemented, I mean, you have to learn about basics of bankruptcy, and so we have a very thorough training process, and I couldn't be more happy with the team I have right now.
When do you first meet the client?
One, Rich signs the client up and refers them now to Annette. Annette brings me into that call. So we're doing the intake. That's usually when I meet with them. That's where we usually address any high level issues, right? So that's usually when we're looking at what are the potential big problems here. You know what I mean? There are things that we want to address, the big things that are going to keep them from filing a bankruptcy or cause big issues in the case. We want to rule those out. We want to, and then I also meet with them after we've gone through the whole process. We're looking at the final document. They've had a chance to review it. So I touched them a couple of different places. I like to also meet with them before the 341, walk them through that, because I'm typically the person that they're going to have to feel most comfortable with in that, and I'll be kind of with them in the 341. So there's kind of 3 different touch points. And then one of the things that this does, though, is it frees me up for when they need a little extra TLC, right? And they could always schedule an appointment with me. But before, when I was doing more of this, I did not have time to do that. So I did not have a lot of time for the hand holding. And the hand holding, for me at least, is the part that I actually do like. I feel like I get a lot of satisfaction from, like, I'm helping these people.
When you meet them, Rich has already closed the deal, right? He's already taken some money.
He's already usually taken their filing fee and maybe the fee for doing their credit report. Yeah.
Do you have to do installments, or you do zero down?
So most of my clients do some kind of installment. So they're paying towards it. We don't actually, take that money until we file their case. But yeah, most of my clients are on some kind of installment plan. I don't love zero down because I get it. What I found was that it gets a lot of not great invested people. So if they know that the payments are coming, it keeps them invested in the process and pushes them through, because they're like, oh, I've been paying, I've already paid $800. I want to get this done.
He does do zero down in some states, but he does pay before filing in another state. So he's
Oh,
doing.
you're in more than one state. I got it.
I am. Yeah.
You know the governor of Hawaii's name is Josh Green, right?
I do. Yeah, actually, I saw that, and it made me laugh because my brother actually texted to me. He's like, "Do you want to tell me something?" No, that's still not me. But yeah,
Thank you, Marty. Josh, thank you for your time, your transparency. The truth of the matter is, we've all had these issues as small business owners, and you're bold and confident enough to be able to get on a video and talk about it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, guys, all the best. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.